You have watched someone you trusted completely do something you never expected. Maybe it was small. Maybe it was the way they treated a waiter when they thought you weren't paying attention, or the way they spoke about someone who had just left the room, or the sudden coldness that appeared in their eyes when they believed no one important was watching. And you felt it before you understood it. Something shifted inside you, quietly, like a door closing in a room you had always assumed was open. You told yourself it meant nothing. You rationalized it, smoothed it over, filed it away. But some part of you knew. Some part of you had just seen something real. Most of us spend enormous energy trying to read people. We analyze their words, their social media presence, their professional achievements, the stories they tell about themselves at dinner parties. We treat character like a document to be studied, a resume to be evaluated, a series of stated intentions to be believed or doubted. And we get it wrong, over and over, because we are looking in entirely the wrong places. We are watching the performance when we should be watching the rehearsal. We are examining the mask when we should be paying attention to what slips when the mask gets heavy. Hannah Arendt, the philosopher who spent her life examining what it means to be human in a world that can twist and corrupt and demand, understood something that most of us sense but cannot articulate. She understood that character is not what people claim to be. It is not what they intend to be. It is not even, in many cases, what they believe themselves to be. Character is what appears. It is what surfaces involuntarily in the moments when the ordinary social calculations we all perform cease to function, when the effort of maintaining an image becomes too costly or simply too irrelevant to sustain. And those moments, she would suggest, are rarer than we think. They are also more revealing than almost anything else we can observe about another human being. There are exactly two such moments. Most people spend their entire lives never learning to recognize them. If this is landing for you already, if you are nodding because you have been burned by someone you thought you knew, or because you are starting to wonder what your own behavior in unguarded moments actually reveals, consider subscribing. I explore these questions every week, sitting with ideas that are uncomfortable but necessary. I would be glad to have you here. The first moment is the one nobody warns you about, because it looks entirely ordinary. It is the moment of no consequence. It is the moment when nothing is at stake, when no one is watching who matters, when the outcome of how one behaves will not affect one's reputation, one's relationships, one's career, or one's self-image in any significant way. It is, to put it plainly, the moment of invisibility. And it is in this moment that character appears with the kind of clarity that years of deliberate self-presentation cannot produce. Think about what happens to most people in these moments. When the parking lot is empty and someone has left their shopping cart in a space. When the cashier gives too much change and the line behind you is distracted. When a colleague makes a mistake and the blame could easily be redirected. When no one will ever know either way. These are not dramatic tests of character. They are precisely the opposite. They are mundane, ordinary, entirely forgettable situations. And that is exactly why they reveal so much. Arendt wrote about action as the highest expression of the human capacity to begin something new. But she also understood that most of what we do is not action in this elevated sense. Most of what we do is behavior, the repetition of habitual patterns, the largely unreflective performance of who we have already become. And behavior, unlike deliberate action, is difficult to fake. You can control what you do when you know the consequences matter. You cannot as easily control who you are when you believe the consequences are absent. A person I once knew was extraordinarily generous in public situations. He gave money to causes, offered help when asked, performed acts of kindness that were witnessed and appreciated by the people in his life. But I noticed something over time. The generosity had a particular quality. It always seemed to know its audience. When no one was looking, the calculation changed. Small cruelties appeared, not dramatic ones, but the kind that accumulate quietly. The dismissiveness toward people who could not help him. The slight contempt when someone needed something from him without having anything to offer in return. He was not a villainous person. He was simply someone who had never examined the gap between his public character and his private one, because no one had ever forced him to look. I know many of you watching this have had this experience too. You have seen someone you admired or loved behave in a way that revealed something they would never choose to show you directly. Maybe you are sitting with the confusion of it right now, trying to reconcile two versions of the same person, wondering which one is real. Let me ask you something directly. When did you first notice that the person you thought you knew was not entirely who they appeared to be? What was the small moment that changed everything? Share it in the comments if you can. You do not have to name anyone or explain everything. Just tell me what you saw. And if the words feel too heavy right now, just type this: I have seen this too. Because when you do, someone else watching will recognize that they are not alone in trying to make sense of what they witnessed, and that recognition matters more than you know. The invisibility test is not primarily a tool for evaluating others, though it becomes that. It is first and most importantly a mirror, because the question it asks of us is deeply uncomfortable. What do you do when no one is watching? Not what do you intend to do, not what you would like to believe you do. What do you actually do in the small, ordinary moments when the social pressure to perform goodness is absent? Most of us would rather not look too closely. It is far easier to evaluate the character of others than to examine the consistency between our stated values and our unremarkable daily behavior. Arendt had a concept she called the banality of evil, which described how ordinary people participate in monstrous systems, not through dramatic villainy, but through thoughtlessness, through the habitual performance of roles, without examining what those roles require of them. The application here is gentler, but structurally similar. Most of what is wrong in how we treat one another is not the result of bad intentions or dramatic moral failures. It is the result of thoughtlessness in the moments of no consequence, the accumulated weight of all the small choices we made when we believed they did not matter, when we told ourselves no one would ever know, when we treated the invisible moment as if it carried no reality simply because it carried no audience. The second moment is almost the opposite. Where the first is quiet and forgettable, the second is loud and impossible to escape. It is the moment of genuine pressure, of real loss, of crisis that cannot be managed or explained away. It is the moment when the ordinary resources of social intelligence, charm, competence, and reputation fail to protect a person from the rawness of what is actually happening to them. And in that rawness, something fundamental is revealed. We have a distorted relationship with how people behave under pressure because we tend to excuse a great deal of it. We tell ourselves that someone who becomes cruel or withdrawn under stress is just stressed. We tell ourselves that the way someone treats others when they are frightened or grieving or overwhelmed is not the real them. But I want to suggest something that might be difficult to hear. The way a person behaves when they are under genuine pressure is not a distortion of their character. It is among the truest expressions of it. Because pressure does not create what is not already there. It simply removes the effort required to conceal it. Think about what pressure actually does. It eliminates the energy available for performance. It strips away the cognitive bandwidth we normally dedicate to managing how others perceive us. It returns a person to something closer to their actual baseline, the orientation toward themselves and toward others that operates beneath the more deliberate layers of their social self. Under enough pressure, people who are fundamentally generous tend to remain generous even when it costs them. People who are fundamentally contemptuous of others tend to become more openly contemptuous not less, when they are frightened or in pain. The pressure does not change the character. It illuminates it. This is not a comfortable idea, because most of us have behaved badly under pressure at some point, and would prefer to believe that this behavior was the exception rather than the evidence. And I want to be precise here, because the distinction matters. There is a difference between a momentary lapse and a revealed pattern. A single act of unkindness in a moment of crisis does not define a person, but a consistent orientation, the way someone habitually relates to others when their comfort or control is threatened, tells you something that years of pleasant interactions cannot contradict. Arendt was deeply interested in what she called the space of appearance, the realm in which we become visible to others and to ourselves through our actions. Under ordinary conditions, this space is managed, curated, shaped by intention. Under pressure, the management fails. The space of appearance becomes, for a time, involuntary. What appears in it belongs not to the performed self, but to something deeper and more stubborn. If what I am exploring here is opening something for you, if these ideas are prompting you to look at your own life and relationships with fresh eyes, I want you to know that this channel exists for exactly this kind of inquiry. There is a community of people here who are not interested in easy answers, who want to sit with the difficult questions about what it means to be human and to understand ourselves and others more honestly. If that is you, consider subscribing and share this with someone you think would benefit from this perspective. Not because you need to convince them of anything, but because sometimes the right question at the right moment changes everything. What do we do with these two moments once we learn to see them? This is where the inquiry becomes genuinely important, because the temptation is to use this understanding as a tool of judgment, to audit the people in our lives against a new standard and find them wanting. But Arendt would resist this reduction, and so should we. The point is not to become a more efficient evaluator of others. The point is to develop a more honest relationship with the question of character altogether, including our own. Because here is what the two moments share. In both of them, the ordinary social contract is suspended. In the moment of invisibility, it is suspended because no consequences are apparent. In the moment of pressure, it is suspended because the cost of maintaining it is too high. And in both cases, what remains is something closer to the actual person, the self that exists beneath the project of being perceived well. Most of us never examine this layer of ourselves with any real honesty, because doing so requires a kind of courage that is in genuinely short supply. It is far easier to manage our image than to examine our actual orientation toward others, toward fairness, toward kindness, toward truth. Arendt wrote about the examined life as the prerequisite for genuine humanity. She meant something specific by this. Not that we must be constantly introspective or psychologically obsessed with ourselves, but that we must cultivate the habit of watching our own behavior with the same clear eyes we turn toward others. What do I do when no one is watching? What do I do when I'm frightened or overwhelmed or in real pain? These are not easy questions, but they are the ones that matter, because they are the questions that character actually answers, whether or not we choose to ask them. The person you watched that day, the one whose behavior surprised you, was not revealing a hidden monster or a hidden saint. They were revealing the accumulated weight of all the invisible moments they had never examined. They were showing you who they had become through years of choices made in the spaces they believed were consequence-free. And the disturbing truth is that you are doing the same thing every day in your own invisible moments, composing the character that will appear involuntarily when the pressure comes. If what I have shared here has opened something for you, if it has shifted the way you see either yourself or the people around you, then I want to invite you genuinely into this space, not as a subscriber in the commercial sense, but as a companion in a kind of inquiry that I believe is among the most important we can undertake. There are many people here who are asking the same questions, who are trying to understand themselves and others more honestly, who are not satisfied with the surface version of what it means to be a good person. I explore these questions every week, and I would be genuinely honored to have you here. If this feels right, subscribe and leave a comment below telling me which of these two moments you find more revealing, the invisible moment or the pressure moment, and why. I read every response, and your perspective often illuminates something I had not considered. Your presence here matters. You began watching this because something in the title caught you. Perhaps you have been trying to understand someone whose behavior confused you. Perhaps you have been trying to understand yourself. Perhaps both. What I hope you are leaving with is not a formula for judging others, but a new kind of attention, a willingness to watch the unguarded moments, your own and others, with the seriousness they deserve. Because character is not a document. It is not a set of intentions. It is not what anyone says about themselves, including you about yourself. It is what appears in the moments when appearance itself stops being managed. And those moments, if you learn to see them, will tell you more about who a person truly is than almost anything else you could ever observe. The question is simply whether you are willing to look, and more importantly, whether you are willing to look at yourself with the same unflinching honesty that Arendt believed was the beginning of genuine human understanding.